So we'll begin the session on simple and compound interest. Today's lesson is going to focus on simple interest. Okay? Simple interest. There's two situations. You could earn interest, which is a good situation where you're investing money and your money is making money. So if you invest $1,000, when you take it out of that investment, you end up with more than $1,000. The other situation is you could borrow money. Now, when you borrow $1,000 from the bank, you don't just have to pay them $1,000 back in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, whatever it is. The bank charges you interest. So if you're borrowing interest, you want to choose like lower rates and you want to choose shorter terms and pay it back quickly so that you don't end up paying the bank back a whole bunch extra. But if you are investing money, you want to invest it at the higher rates and leave it in for longer terms, and then you'll end up with a whole bunch of money when it's all said and done. We're going to focus on simple interest. Simple interest, it's calculated, or interest calculated as a percentage of the principal. Now, on your notes, make a little note here on what the principal means. Okay? The principal, not Mr. Bose, is the amount of money, so it's dollars, you invest or borrow. So just think about this. When you're investing money, you're making money, you're getting more money back. When you borrow money, you actually owe more money. We'll focus on compound interest tomorrow. That's a little bigger equation. All right, there's a little more to it. Today's lesson is only simple interest. These will be important tomorrow when we talk about the number of compounds or compounding frequencies. Don't have to worry about that today. Here is the simple interest formula. I represents the interest. That's how much extra you're going to receive if you invest the money, or that's how much extra you're going to owe if you borrow the money. P is the principal. Again, what did we just say the principal was? It's like the initial amount. It's the amount that you start with, that you put in the bank to invest or that you borrow from the bank. R is the interest rate. And it has to be expressed as a decimal. So it's a percentage. They'll tell you the percentage. It might be 5% or 1.4%, but you have to express that as a decimal. So make a little note. And how do we change percentages to decimals? What have we been doing? Divide by 100. Lisa, thank you. Okay? Percent literally translates to per 100. Cent is the French word for 100. T. That's the term or the amount of time. And it's expressed in years. So we'll explore what we do when they give us months. An amount of months or days. Okay? So let's look at the first question. And again, as I said before we started recording, if they tell you the principal and the rate and the time, you could calculate the interest. But if they gave you the interest and the rate and the time, you could get principal. I could solve for time. If I wanted to solve for time, they'd have to tell me the amount of interest I earned, how much I invested or borrowed, and what rate it was being invested or borrowed at. So you can solve for any one of these four variables, unknowns, as long as you have the other three. Here's the first question. Your boy Gordon wants to invest $2,000. His bank offers an investment option that earns simple interest at 1.75% per year. Now, let's ask a question here. Let's say, how much interest will Gordon earn after 1 year? So what you should do with all of these questions is you should write down your given information. What did they tell me? What's this first number right here? Is that I, is that P, is that R, or is that T? What is it? Okay, some people say I, because it says invest, maybe? What did we write down here? If I go back, principal is the amount you invest or borrow. Do you want to change that answer? How much does Gordon invest? So he's investing $2,000. That's actually the principal. Okay? So I know that P equals $2,000. His bank offers an investment option that earns simple interest at a rate of 1.75%. What's that represent? Is that I, R, or T? That's R. That's the rate. Now, what do you have to do to the 1.75%? Hold on. Before I do anything to that, what did we say the rate had to be expressed as a what? Decimal. Okay? So what should I use? Not 1.75, rather 0.0175. Awesome. A lot of people think it's just 0.175. That would actually be 17.5%. If you're not good at converting these, like all he really did was swing the decimal place 2 spots to the left, and it would give him this. But you could use your calculator and go 1.75 divided by 100, and that's what you should get. Now, I want to know the interest. I'm solving for I. What's the time? So T is going to equal 1 year. And it's in years. It's good. I don't have to change anything. If I fill this formula in, it looks like this. 2,000 times 0.0175 times 1. So the principal would go in there. The interest rate as a decimal would go here. And my time in years would go here. What do you get when you multiply 2,000 by 0.0175? Yeah, and if you multiply that by 1, you still get 35. 35 what? Dollars. So here's what happens. You put $2,000 in the bank and you just leave it. You don't touch it. And then after 1 year, it's actually worth $2,035. You've earned $35 in interest. Yes, Randy? What's that? I have no idea what you're saying, pal. What is it you want? What are you saying? Next question. It looks the exact same. We're still talking about $2,000. And the interest rate is still 1.75%. But what changed? 3 years. So it wants to know the interest. If it says calculate the interest. So not the final amount. Calculate the interest. Period. The given information hasn't changed. The principal, the amount I invest, is $2,000. What's the interest rate? $0.0175. And what's the time now? 3 years. So if I want to know the interest, I'm just going to multiply those three numbers together. I is going to equal 2,000 times 0.0175 times 3. Anyone know what it should be real quick? Okay, so you're giving me the final amount. What would the interest be? 105. What would be a real quick way to do that? Multiply 35 by 3. Like 2,000 times 0.0175 gave me 35. That's what we got in the last question. If I multiply 35 by 3, there's my 105. So $105 is the interest. Now to go back to Randy's question or what Ronan just mentioned, like how much would the investment, how much money would I actually have in the bank? 2,000 plus the 105, I'd have $2,105 in the bank. Is that okay? So the questions don't really change that much. The formula stays the same. They just might ask you to figure out the principal, or they might ask you to figure out the rate, or they might ask you to figure out the time, or they might give you the time in months or days. So here's a question where they use months instead of years. It says Betty Ann's bank offers a simple interest rate of 4% per annum. Annum is a Latin word for year. Okay. How much interest would Betty Ann earn on her investment of $4,000 after 8 months? So off to the side, let's go here and write down the given. What's the principal? How much does Betty Ann invest? $4,000. Nice. What's the interest rate? What's R? 4% as a decimal? 0.04. Wicked. And what's the time this time? Okay, so he's saying 0.6 repeating. Okay. Fair enough. How do you get that? I wouldn't even change it to a decimal. If it says 8 months, just divide by 12. Now you can leave it like that. You could reduce it. If you divide both of those by 4, you would get the 2/3. You with me? And that 2/3, if I wanted to express it as a decimal, would be 0.66 or 0.67. All right? But you're going to be rounding there. So in order to keep this more accurate, don't bother rounding it. You can literally go I equals 4,000. So fill a 4,000 in for P. Fill the 0.04 in for R. That's the rate. And for time, I would just go 8/12. Instead of writing 0.66 or 0.6666 or 0.67, because then you're rounding, and then there's errors in your rounding errors, and our answers are all different. If I do this, how would I do that calculation in my calculator? You're going to go 4,000 times 0.04 times 8, and then do what in the end? Divide by 12. Okay, so let's do that. What's 4,000 times 0.04 times 8? That gives me 1,280, and I'm going to divide that by 12. Okay, I don't even have to hit equals after I do the multiplication. What do I get for an answer? 106 point what? 6 repeating. If I round it to the nearest cent, 6, 7. All right. Sort of like these were made long before that was relevant. Yeah, you can. Yeah. So how much interest did Betty Ann earn? $106.67. She'd have $4,106.67 in the bank after 8 months. That's not bad. She didn't really do anything. She just put money in the bank. You might say, oh, it's only $100 or $106, but better than nothing. Right? And what do we take away from this? What are you going to do anytime it gives you months? Divided by 12. I don't care if you reduce the fraction or not. Like if it's 7 months, 7 over 12 is not going to reduce. But if it's 2/12, that would be 1/6. If it's 3/12, that's a quarter. 4/12, that's a third. 5/12 doesn't reduce. 6/12 is a half. 7/12 doesn't reduce. 8/12 is 2/3. 9/12 is 3/4. 10/12, 5/6. You don't have to reduce it. You can just leave it as 8 over 12 and just go 4,000, your principal, times 0.04, your rate, times the time, 8 divided by 12. What would you do if it's days? What if it was 8 days? What would I divide by? Yeah, that's right. This would say 8 over 365, and I'd go 4,000 times 0.04 times 8 divided by 365. Why? Because there's 365 days in a year. Try this one on your own. I'll pause the video. You guys can try it on your own. We'll correct this, and then you can go to work on some sheets. It's back online. So we looked through this. We wrote down our given information. Common mistake is that people think this $25 is the principal. No, that's the interest. I represents the interest. The interest rate as a decimal, R, 0.06. The time it was invested for, or the term, is 2. And it wants to know the principal. So when I fill this in, the 25 goes here, my equal sign. I'm looking for the principal. I don't know what that is. I know that R is 0.06, not 0.6. That would be 60%. And I know that T is 2. Multiply on this side. What's 0.06 times 2? When I multiply those two things together, I get 0.12. And then it's multiplied by P. So instead of writing P times 0.12, I wrote 0.12P. Does it matter? Like, could I have written this that way? Sure. How would you get rid of the times 0.12? Right, we're used to doing this from our previous units. So all I do at this stage is I'm going to divide both sides by whatever that decimal happens to be. Those go away, and it would leave a P on the right-hand side. P for principal. But whatever you do to the right-hand side, make sure you do the same thing to the left-hand side. What's 25 divided by 0.12? There's your $208 and 33 cents, right? I'll leave it round to the nearest cent. And understand that the 208.33 represents the amount of money that this person would have to invest for 2 years at 6% in order to get or earn $25 in interest. Fair? That's the lesson for today. You guys can go ahead and work on your sheet. If anyone wants help, we can go to the back table.